A point of amplification while people are coming in, at least from my point of view, my opinion, is that what's a theme that you're continually hearing and that you'll hear throughout the day and probably throughout the week is that asset management is not reliability and asset management is not maintenance, and it's not. And really, I think that there's language that has to get further defined, and I'm very excited about our next speaker. In fact, I wish I could just let him start at 8 in the morning, go all the way to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because that's how deep the body of knowledge that he's representing is here. He's from the Institute of Asset Management, and write this down. It's theiam.org, and it is what we consider to be the deepest body of knowledge in the world on asset management practices. When you go there, you won't find, I just want a point of clarification, I'll let David speak for himself on it. There isn't a lot about reliability up there. That's what you're doing here. That's what we do. That's what the Association for Maintenance Professionals do. That's what Society of Maintenance and Reliability Professionals do. That's what ASQ does through their Certified Reliability Engineering program. There's lots of organizations that focus on reliability. Our position is reliability enables asset management for existing assets. So it is an important part of the practice, but it is not asset management. And I'm hoping that part of the transformation that happens with this audience here is they start to distinguish the difference between what's maintenance, what's reliability, and what's asset management. That's why we brought these great speakers forward, is to talk about that a little bit and hopefully deepen your understanding. Because we do walk into organizations where oftentimes they'll say we have an asset management program. We had one where we walked in and it was color-coded lubrication guns. And we said, that doesn't look like ISO 55000 to us. But anyway, so that we can get the terminology straight. David's going to talk to us about the asset management profession. And I guess without any further ado, so I'm not eating into his time, please join me to give a warm welcome for David McKeown, Institute of Asset Management.
Terry, I can assure you there's several people in this room who would hate it if I droned on until 4 o'clock. But thank you for that compliment. Yes, thank you, Reese. Just before I start, can I save some time? If anyone has a badge here which says 609, can we go and win the iPads, please? So if you see anyone with 609, send them to me, because I want that iPad. And I do apologize that I can't speak English properly, and you'll have to put up with my accent. I will also, according to Terry, get this wrong. When I say maintenance, I include reliability. So if I offend anyone by getting that wrong, I'll try and remember to say maintenance and reliability, but I do mean both. That's the background I came from. So, talking of my background, just so you've got some idea, I'm actually an engineer, electrical engineer. I was working in railways, I was focused on maintenance, and I thought I was doing a good job. I know I'm quite embarrassed that I spent too much money on some of the assets and the work we did for no value. But I didn't know that. I was doing my best as an engineer to do what I thought was my job. So you can see there I've got some experience in public sector, in railways, in maintenance primarily, and I hated the design engineers because they got it wrong, didn't they? They chucked it over the wall and I had to make it work. The other thing that really appalled me later on was someone explained to me that as a maintenance engineer, I could only ever make it worse. Just think about that for a minute. Your whole mission in life is to make things almost not worse, because it can't ever be better than it was designed to be. So if you're a perfect maintenance reliability engineer, it will deliver what it was designed to do. How many of you are perfect? Well, you can exclude me. So, I'm sorry, I'm going to walk in front of the projector. I wander around when I'm nervous, sorry about that. The other thing, I've worked in volunteer organizations, I've been freelance, and I'm now running a volunteer, not-for-profit membership organization. But fortunately, if there's any difficult questions, around the room I've got some experts who actually do know the answers. So meanwhile, enjoy the next half hour or so, because I'm going to ask you to forget all your usual KPIs, drivers, the pagers, the phone messages, the emails, and just drift up to a big picture. Think about the people you work with, even those in finance. Do you like them? What do you think of them? What do they think of you and the work you're doing? If you ask them, what might they say? Or better, if I ask them, what might they say? And when did you make the decision to do what you're doing? Did you say, Mummy, I'm going to be a maintenance reliability professional? Did you? I didn't. It was, Daddy, Daddy, I'm going to be an astronaut, or whatever. So it's lots of small decisions that suddenly take you somewhere. And you might be happy with that, you might not. But is that sometimes the way we run our companies and do maintenance and reliability? Lots of ad hoc decisions get you somewhere you didn't quite intend to be. So as that sort of background, that's what I want you to be thinking about. So why are you here? Very kind of you to sit there, clap, and say hello, but why are you here? Is it my boss sent me? That's a good answer. But I have to sit through this boring set of speakers. Or do you want to be here? And if so, why? What do you expect from me? So what I want you to do is just, and I couldn't manage the music, so if you could all just hum gently John Lennon's Imagine, okay? Can you just get that in your brain? What I want you to do, sorry, I should have said this first. I know why I'm here. I'm here to learn, to share, and hopefully to network and get to know some of you. Sorry. Right. Supposing, in this wonderful world we're going to conjure up. Have you heard that before? Okay, so when we talk about assets, is this what we're talking about? Do we look after our people as assets? Do we select them carefully? Do they have the right functional profile? Do we look after them? Do we maintain them? In your organization, if I went to each of your board members and said singly, what are you here for, what are you doing, would I get exactly the same answer? More importantly, if I went down to the janitor or to the person doing maintenance, would I get the same answer? Put up your hand if you believe that is yes. Just look around. There isn't anyone putting their hand up. Thank you, Scott, this morning for bringing us back to earth and the reality of silos and the different attitudes in different tribes within your organization. Does that help? Does it really help? How many of those people with big budgets are happy to reduce theirs and give you more because actually, for the organization, they understand that's a better outcome? There's an awful lot of shaking heads. Maybe put up your hand if you think it would happen in your organization. Not one. Okay? Now then, let's talk about our friends, the accountants. So you're making a business case. The asset is going to last maybe 100 years in some organizations. How long will it get depreciated over? 100 years? Don't think so. So when you look at the list of things, and Scott was saying this too, about what they think's in the asset register, is that valued correctly? Does it actually make sense when you make your business case? And are you making the right business case? Are you talking the language of the finance people? And again, I think I'm repeating a bit of what Scott said. So let's talk about the language of investment. In your organization, are you perceived as an investment or an overhead cost to be cut? Put your hand up if it's an investment. Great. There's about half a dozen hands up. That's superb. And I would argue that asset management will help you justify what you're doing for value reasons. So, to me, an investment decision is not just, you can make purely financial ones. Where do you put your money in your retirement fund? That's fine. But most investment decisions are what do you do with your money. Are we going to have a new works, a new machine, a new person, whatever it happens to be? So why isn't money spent on maintenance the same? Why do we get so confused with CapEx and OpEx and classify them differently, treat them differently? Why don't you talk in those terms to your colleagues? I would argue you should do. So I would argue it's a purely funding and financial decision as to whether you make and capitalize certain costs. Because traditions and accountants don't get that right, in my opinion. I'm trying to stir up some questions at the end as well, by the way. How about this one? Given the length of the time the next vote is needed, how many of our leaders are prepared to take long-term decisions? And how different is that in your organization when it's the quarterly results that value the company? And how much sense does that make? Okay? So you can understand that what I'm putting up here is trying to make you think about how could things be. Okay. So I'm going to say we don't know what asset management is entirely yet. The real excitement for me is it's emerging. We are learning as we go on. There's quite a lot of stuff we think we know, There's quite a lot of stuff we don't know yet. Your mother is probably quite good at asset management. She doesn't know she is. She says things like a stitch in time saves 9. So she's thinking about when do you put the time and effort in, and do you leave it, or is that harder to deal with? That's asset management. So I would say it's simple, but it isn't easy. And the reason it's not easy is culture, leadership, people, behaviors. The techniques are relatively easy. So I'm going to end up, after this, arguing there's a difference between the profession of asset management and the ISO. But the reason I gave that talk, that title, is I believe, and it's good news today that Reese has told us it's going to be published. It's great news. It's going to be there. And I think that marks the coming of age from difficult teens to maybe some early adult behaviors in asset management. However, there are some challenges, I think. I don't know how many of your bosses will say, do this, because they want another tick in the box. They want 9001, 14001. Oh, God, there's another one. Get it. Job done. If you do that, you are wasting your time, money, and effort. Do not do it and try and get rid of him because he doesn't understand. You will hear all kinds of consultants come up with new names. There'll be enterprise asset management, infrastructure asset management, maintenance asset management, reliability asset management. There'll be any number because everyone's trying to sell you something different. No, there is asset management applied to different things. And if you really think the software is going to do this out of the box, does Word write your business plan for you? No. You use it to write your business plan. That's the relevance of some of these systems. And I know I shall annoy people here. I'm sorry, but well, I'm not sorry, actually. I'm looking forward to the discussion. It's not a project to be over with. It's not something that pays back in 6 months. Don't think of it like that. And I think Scott again led us in the right direction. It's not about the assets. It really isn't about the assets. It doesn't actually matter what your assets are. It's a frame of mind, it's a philosophy, and it's approach, it's a way of thinking. So, repeat after me. Asset management is not just about the management of the assets, right? Asset management is not just about the management of the assets. Now, I get into trouble for saying this. Okay? I also get into trouble for saying don't go and get a certificate because it's of no value unless your stakeholders want it. Okay? I think you should do this if you want value. You will get value from doing this consistently and not if you focus on the assets. If you're looking at the tree, you won't see the wood. You won't get the big picture. So what I'm trying to give you today is what I think asset management is about. I want you to try and understand it in those terms, and then we can talk about some techniques. So I shall say I didn't show you that slide, by the way. Okay, right. You're going to have some little pictures now. I want you to do some thinking. What is the business case for a pyramid? Was this good asset management? It's not new. We've been doing asset management for quite a few years. Was this good asset management? Has it achieved its objective? Asking maintenance engineers about pyramids is quite an interesting experience, I find. So when did you last go up and polish it and wipe it clean or inspect it? What KPIs would you like to put against this? So ask yourself what the value is. And if you're Pharaoh, you don't need to make a business case. You summon up a few slaves, you use a few slaves, you get some more, and you build a pyramid. Now, I don't pretend to be a historian and know the exact reason, but it's easy to do, isn't it? So what's the value? What's the value? Okay. Let's talk about love. The Taj Mahal was built to celebrate love by someone who had quite a lot of money and the resources to do this. Is that good use of assets? Has it achieved its objective? No, you can't see it from space, but it is the Great Wall of China. Unfortunately, if you talk about defense, how much is worth spending on, is it homeland security you talk about these days? What's the value we're achieving here? How much should we spend? Unfortunately, in this case, they went round the end of the wall twice, which is a shame because they couldn't have got over it. That's fine. So again, has that achieved its aim? Was that good use of investment? It didn't need a lot of maintenance. It's still there, arguably. Let's get closer to home. I think it's nearly 100 years ago now, is it? 1927? Something like that. What's the purpose? What's the value? Why the investment? Has it worked? Should it be maintained? Mount Rushmore, in case anyone isn't from the States. I don't know, but somebody thought it was worth spending a lot of money on that. I would say, what's the aim here? Possibly unifying, political, maybe with a small p, celebrating community? I don't know. What would you say? And has it achieved that? There's much space for all the rest. Maybe you wouldn't want to remember all of them. I don't know. Who am I to say? Let's go back to the little old UK. That for 300 years was the tallest building in the world. It was built nearly 1,000 years ago, 1088 it started being built. That's Lincoln Cathedral. What's the case for that? Or indeed any temple or depending on the religion. Does it achieve its value? It's very beautiful. It took many lifetimes of quite a few skilled people to do that, and it's now being maintained, hopefully fairly well. So, what I'm trying to say to you is value comes in all shapes and sizes. It's not just the bottom line. Although I like dollars, I'd like more of them, but that isn't the only measure. That's what I'm trying to say to you with this. So let's talk about sewage. It's early in the morning, you're all engineers, you can cope with this. What is that? Clues in the name. What is that? Yeah, it's a particular sewer. Anybody happen to know? It is London, yeah. So when you think of London, you probably think of, I don't know, Buckingham Palace or Big Ben or Houses of Parliament or the river or something. I think of sewers. So 150 years ago, what you may not know is there was cholera, the Thames was dead, there weren't nothing living in it. There was what was called the Great Stink, and actually the politicians and the royalty all moved out of London. And they decided to do something about it, so they got an engineer. And that's the bit I agree with. So a guy called Bazalgette was tasked with solving this. Now, what would you have done? What would you have done? What he did was build, and let me just get some of the numbers right, 1,000 miles of street sewers feeding 82 miles of this sort of really quite beautiful brick structure, main sewers, which are still in use. This is why I'm talking to you about them. So when he sized them, what do you think he did? So let's not be delicate, ladies and gentlemen. How would you size a sewer? Number of people, that's the easy bit. Thank you, Terry. Yes, and multiply that by... Don't be embarrassed. So the point is, he worked out what he thought was the maximum output. He said delicately, okay. He multiplied that by the population. But the interesting bit is he then said, and I'm quoting, well, we're only going to do this once, and there's always the unforeseen. He then doubled the diameter of the original drawings. Now that greatly increases the capacity, right? He then added a little bit for the unforeseen. Now, why does that matter? Well, the answer is that he didn't think about tower blocks. He didn't think about modern building of London. And so for all that time, we've been surviving on that investment. Was that good asset management? In your company, if you went to the FD and said, tell you what, I've got this great idea and I'd like to double it and add a bit. Is that all right? But in terms of the value to London, the sewers would have been overflowing in the 60s if he'd done it the strict business case way. So what is good asset management? I don't, by the way, have all the answers here. I want you to do the thinking. I told you that. The door's open, but that's the warning. Okay, that's where the IM office is, a nice park in the middle. So, that's looking out across the city. It's obviously a very nice space. What is the value of that park? Is it the value you'd get to develop it? Should you sell the land? What's the value to an office worker of getting into that sort of space at lunchtime? What should the council spend on the trees? That, by the way, is the Cabot Tower commemorating John Cabot's voyage to, let's say, North America, to avoid any incidents. So what is it worth spending on maintaining this? How would you make your case to the council? So the point I'm trying to make here is it's not just dollars, it's a triple bottom line, but it's also value as chosen by whoever's spending the money. And that's the big message, I think. Okay, so interesting that you can go back to authors and people to learn that lesson. This is quite a good lesson for your bosses. John Ruskin was a poet and an author and a critic and such like. A long time ago, actually, and he said, I don't know if you can read that at the back, can you? Could you put your hand up at the back row if you could? Yeah. Just give you a minute to absorb that. Spoiling the ship for a ha'porth of tower. Okay, you make it, and then it doesn't quite deliver its function at all. Your investment is totally wasted. So cutting too much off the price is actually the worst thing you can do. I was party to a rather large railway construction project, and I observed the attitude of value engineers. I observed the attitude of some of the project management who de-scoped it in order to deliver on time, on budget. And I know that it is less maintainable and that the functions and the resilience are not there. That's wrong. Because the people who've paid the money don't realize that. Okay. When should you do your measurements? If you were looking at the success or otherwise of the human race, should we measure now? Or are we not there yet? Are you perfect yet? Should we, when do you do your KPIs? We hear about leading and lagging indicators and all this nonsense, but what are we actually trying to get out of all this measurement? And I'm going to argue that often, far too often, it happens too soon. So, are you going to wait till the end of the race? It's the point we tend to measure things, isn't it? What was the end of year result? What was the race? What was the hockey match score? Or maybe we ought to think about how we do things. Maybe it's the techniques all the way through. Maybe you should be not taking 5-year control periods in regulation terms or whatever fixed period. Maybe it should be long-term and measure any time you like. Wouldn't that be interesting? You can't hide all the figures that way. I can make a balance sheet look attractive, but not forever. Can't hide it. If you have continuous processes and you can look any time, that's honest. So, if you were to look at the inputs, outputs, but more to the point, how do you do things, that might be a better way of managing and looking at and assessing the way your organization works, the way you work. So, let's see if we're getting anywhere or whether I'm going to have an argument on my hands. If you are not going to do this permanently, don't do it. There is heartache in store for you. If this is a project to be done and forget about it, don't do it. So if you're prepared to transform your whole way of doing things, this is exciting, you will get value from it. I would argue that, again, Rees gave us the benefit of his sort of top 4, if you like, in PAS 55. I would say long-term thinking is the key almost to all of this. If you're going to make the same decision if you extend the timescale, you're probably making the right decision. The clarity of purpose, begin with the end in mind, everybody trying to achieve the same thing, communicating enough to make sure you're all trying to do the same thing. How many sets of data have you got in your company? Do you have a private little spreadsheet that you can look up quickly the things you need? Or is it all in the beautiful IT system provided by the company? What I find is that typically the finance and the engineers don't do the same data anyway. It's not in one system, and everybody has their own little ready reckoners. Everybody should know what we're trying to do, what we are trying to do. Line of sight, I'm not going to expand on again. I think Reece covered that. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is that it's not the assets. You use assets to achieve something. Don't focus on them. What you do to them should create value. So you need to make your case for the maintenance and reliability based on the value that gives back. So does that extend life? Does that improve performance? Does that reduce costs somewhere else? Or should you not be doing it? Would you be able to go to your boss and say, I want to reduce my maintenance spend because it'll be better for the company? Would you actually feel like doing that? Because we should think that way too. Just briefly, I want to explain our view in the Institute about what this means for the profession then. So this is in a format which I won't go back into, but the Global Forum has got a framework and we use the same layout for our stuff. And what it shows is, if I'm doing the right thing here. No, I'm tall enough anyway, really. So what I find is that even really intelligent people don't get all this straight away. They get the high level, but a lot of the consequences and detail don't come. So we've got the concept of a journey, that everybody's on a journey at some point. I am. Hopefully you are as well, getting more and more knowledgeable and expert. So the same thing goes for organizations. They do not get this straight away. And even if they get the intent, they don't become expert or excellent straight away. In the middle here, the Global Forum has got some 39 subjects. There's a thing called the Anatomy of Asset Management you can download from our site if you're interested in this stuff, which describes the scope of the profession. So in the middle here, everything's linked back to those subjects in that scope. And the four principles in the ISO, and I'm just going to crib to make sure I get these right, because the names keep changing as you picked up, is value, alignment, leadership, and assurance. So in the center are the principles that are in the ISO, and then the scope of the subject. And then all around the donut are the things and products and services. So on the individual side, it's more to do with competencies, it's to do with training, it's to do with qualifications, it's to do with personal development. On this side, it's more to do with, well, PAS 55 will be replaced as of today with the ISO, which is great. We're doing subject-specific guidelines, so there's one for each of the 39 subjects, and so on. So there's a knowledge base, there's measures of excellence, there's assessment of organizations, and good practice. So what we're describing is there's a resource and there's a knowledge base that we're trying to put together to help people who want to do this. Everything's linked back to the six-box model at the top, the conceptual model, and most of that stuff is available free if you want it from the website. At the moment, our focus is on individuals, the qualifications. It's quite exciting. I think Terry's launching, is it launched today, the first exams that you're doing? CRL, yeah. So, I mean, we launched about a year ago a certificate and a diploma, which you can take online, and our international qualifications. And the aim is to give people a means of progressing and recognizing competence. So we will eventually be a qualifying body, we hope, for people in the profession. And that's the message I want to leave with you, really. The other thing I just want to say before I move away from this entirely, a lot of people are getting confused between what is the standard here, if you like, and the discipline. So let me just try and give you an analogy on that, the way I think about it. If you think of a doctor, most doctors, whatever their specialism, have some anatomy or they have some basic understanding. And some of them are real experts. But that isn't the same thing if you go to an A&E department in a hospital about the way you run that hospital. So having professional knowledge is not the same thing as organizing the place in which you work. So to me, the discipline, the 39 subjects, is about you becoming a professional. The ISO is about how organizations can be assessed for delivering that service. And I think that's a helpful analogy to try and understand why they're different. So at the moment, I think it's shown on here, is it? No, it's not. We have a thing at the moment called the PASS assessment methodology, which is free to members, so you can self-assess without buying in services. We've converted that so it'll work for the ISO requirements because they're different. And we're looking at using that for the professional 39 subjects in due course. But there's a lot of argument about that because at the excellent end, in different sectors, you have different requirements. And there's a couple of experts in the room here I'll point you to. If you ask me any questions on that, I'm going to step back rapidly and let some of our faculty members deal with that. But that's the analogy I'd try and offer you. So the ISO is really, really important. And the biggest message I want to leave with you today is it's not enough. You need to know what's in the 39 subjects. You need good leaders. You need the right culture. And you need to do this stuff the right way. Okay. So, I want you to try and, well, some of you are old enough almost to know the right tune here. I'm going to argue this is not about what you do. You don't need to do anything extra. You don't need to do anything different. What you need to do is do it the right way. Now, I don't know how many of you are sad enough to know it's not what you do, it's the way that you do it. It's not what you, and I'm not going to ask you all to join in. I think there's a talent show tomorrow night or something. Is it tomorrow night? I am not singing this. But I want you to think about it this way. So if you think about everything that's being done at the moment, supposing everybody in that organization did it with an understanding of where they fit in the organization, the same objectives, who needs the measurements you're taking? Who needs the work you're doing? What do you need from other people? Why are they doing that work? If you could all think in those terms, I think we're probably back to John Lennon territory here, but it really would be a whole lot better, wouldn't it? So it's the way you do things. It's a philosophy, an approach, and it's a framework. So that's the message I want you to take away from what I'm saying. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
Big hand for David, please.